Okay, so let's start, no? So the meta languages for this unit are the following, no? The dependence, the dominance, necessary condition, self-sustaining growth, sufficient condition, and surplus labor. So when we talk about dependence, no? Meaning nagadepende ta, no, sa uban, no, kung in layman's term pa. However, in economics, when we talk about dependence, this is the reliance of developing countries on developed country, no, economic policies to stimulate their own economic growth. So basically, si dependence, no, mo-occur dyan siya particularly sa karon, no, since we are still developing country, we are very much dependent on those countries nga developed na, no. So tinuod man ni kay tungod, if we will base sa Philippines, we are really dependent on US, no, in US and even in China. So China and US is IR kanang mga kusgan, no, mga countries. They are already a developed country. So at some point, this is really existing, no. We are practicing this dependence because we cannot really live, no, on our own. Kay kuan man food, no, kanang sa tao adyo usahay nga dependent ta sa uban, no, because we don't have this and we don't have that, no. So mas nindot jud nga nay partnership and collaboration, pero we should be sure nga ato ang partnership and collaboration is dili lain, no, dili negative ang effect kay basig dependent ra ta kay ta, then sila ra din nakapahimulos, no, sa tua. So later on ma-discuss na nato sa atong mga discussion, no, later. Dominance, this is an international affairs, in international affairs, this is a situation in which the developed countries have much greater power than the less developed countries, no. So if we will base sa ato ang experience, no, personally, mas dominant man jud ng puntahi kinsa may mas dominant class, ang dato or ang pobre. So basically ang dato jud, no, kay tungod naman sila kwarta, makalihok sila kay tungod na sila kwarta. And kung unsay lang gusto, kung unsay lang gusto matuman nila because they have the capability, no, nga mabuhat na compared sa kanang pobre. So meaning limited ra ato ang kanang lihok, no. So in the macro aspect, this is also true, no, in different nations. Mas dominant ang mga developed countries kaysa katong mga developing countries. Thus mas naa sila access, no, to raw materials, no, and even other yung mga inputs, no. Then necessary condition, this is a condition that must be present, although it need not be in itself sufficient for an event to occur. So for example, capital formation may be a necessary condition for sustained economic growth, no. So meaning before na to ma-achieve ang sustained economic growth, it is really necessary nga dapat naatay capital formation. So those are mga necessary conditions before achieving that specific stage, no. Next is self-sustaining growth, no. So this is economic growth that continues over the long run based on saving, investment, and complementary private and public activities. Now, unsa may relationship sa saving, sir, no? Sa self-sustaining growth, no? Unsa man ang concept sa saving sa macro nga aspect, no, sa economic development? How does saving helps the nation, particularly in the economic aspect? Sige daw. Unsa may tabang kaya sa saving? Anong gusto man nato, no? Nganong sa isa ka nation gusto sila nga dako ang saving? Any idea daw, class? Unsa may effect ana niya sa nation?
Mag-increase ang economic growth po, sir.
Nganong mag-increase man? Ngano kaya? Yes, of course, no, kung taas ang savings, we could really kanang foresee nga okay, manindot ang economic growth, no. Pero ang question is that ngano kaya unsa kay reason unsa may matabang sa savings no sa economic growth sa isa ka nation?
For disaster, sir.
Ha?
For mga unpredicted na mga kuan na mga circumstances. Like,
Okay.
Emergency expenses, emergency funds po,
Okay.
or kanang pautang.
Okay. Sige. So basically, katong inyong ingon no katong for emergency purposes no para na magamit during na mga unexpected nga mga happenings. That is true pero katong siya nga reason class is more into micro aspect lang no. Pero if micro aspect siya because personal ra man gud no kanang kung kita tao if natay savings basically natay makuot-kuot no if ever kulangan ta or na mga problems nga na-exist no nga kinahanglan og finances. So that is more into the micro aspect no. Sa savings diri is that inculcate lang nato sa tong mind no because we are talking about econ dev, macro ato ang atake no. So ang savings diri is tama tong ingon sa isa no nga para nata ipautang. Kay ato ang thinking diri class is ang savings is more dito ta sa mga financial institutions god. Pasabot if ang tanang tao sa isa ka nation is na savings no. Meaning ma-add-upan nato ang available kwarta sa mga financial institutions such as banks no. Because 'di ba? Si bangko ang one of mga pinakaayahay no nga financial institution because gamay rag startup capital ang murag ilahang ginarolling is the savings coming from the people no. So meaning kung motaas ang savings sa isa ka nation no, kung i-add up tanan kung tahay sa Bangko Sentral since they have the record, the data of how much is the amount of savings of that specific nation. So kung taas ang savings class, mas taas or mas dako atong pwede ipautang sa financial ay sa mga business establishments no. So meaning that savings will become kanang a source of kanang kwarta kay para maka-finance ta sa mga financial institutions no. Therefore if taas ang savings na noon savings daghag magtukod og business or mas masuportahan to mga business establishments and in return we will have the increased investment no. So since ang atong mga business establishments are kanang murag well financed no by our financial institutions because of the savings of the people. So naa na sila'y kwarta for investment no. We have two types of investment magod we are kanang kalimot lang ko pero I believe ma-discuss din ninyo sa inyong international business and trade no. Nanaw international business and trade class. Natay two types of savings. Savings I mean investment. Investment in the form of capital no. Capital stocks or capital nga katong machine no. Machineries, equipment. So kato so pwede no ang atong investment is through kato, investment through kanang pabahay no kanang mga housing no, investment through stocks no. So possible nga kung taas ang savings, taas pud ang investment no. So mo na ang nilang relationship pud. So since if taas atong savings class, taas atong investment, then we have the private and public nga complementarities no. So meaning we can have or attain this self-sustaining growth no. Next is sufficient condition. So from the word itself suffice no or sufficient, so tama-tama ang condition or kana a condition of which kanang na suffice nimo kung unsay panginahanglan no. So this is a condition that when present causes or guarantees that an event will or can occur in economic models, a condition that logically requires that a statement must be true given other assumption. No, so this is a condition of which dapat before na to ma-achieve na siya nga stage or kana siya nga phase, dapat na suffice na to no kung unsay panginahanglan. Then surplus labor. So this will occur particularly if we will have structural change, no? So when we talk about structural change class, hinon later ma-discuss mo na nato, no? Pag mo yung structural change, there is a change in the structure, no? Unsa may mga different structures sa economy. agricultural industry, no, mo inana good class. So meaning, di ba, si Philippines is from agricultural nga economy, no. However, as time goes by, we really need to adapt, no, to the call sa ato nga other countries are already kanang industrial ilahang structure, no. So kita na nagpabilin pag agriculture, so dapat there is really a move for us to really have or mag-shift from agriculture to industry, no. So that is structural change, no. Na change ang structure sa isa ka nation, no. Ya sa una ilang focus is more into agriculture, karon is more into the industry na, no. Kay if we will base it in the different types of unemployment class, no, of which ma-discuss gapon ni ninyo sa IBT, no, if I'm not mistaken, sa International Business and Trade. Pag mo yung tag structure ay a structural unemployment, no, structural unemployment meaning you are unemployed because there is a change in the structure of the economy, no. Kay for example, ang focus sa una is agricultural engineering, no. So meaning ang mga graduates nato is more into agricultural engineering, agriculturist, mga inana class, no. However, nag-change man ang structure, no, from agriculture to industry, meaning ang atong ginapangita na pud diri is mga IT, no, IT graduates and others nga mga for industry. So pasabot katong mga agricultural engineering nga ng graduate, they are unemployed because of the structural change, no. So meaning ang category sa ila is structural unemployment or structural unemployed, no, na watan sila trabaho because there is a change in the structure of the economy. Okay, so nasabtan. Okay ra. Okay, so let's now have the introduction, no. So we have 4 approaches of economic development. This is based on the classical theories, no. So natay 4 approaches sa econ dev. So the classic post-World War II literature on economic development has been dominated by 4 major and sometimes competing strands of thought, no. So these are the following, no, the linear stages of growth model, theories and patterns of structural change, the international dependence revolution, and the neoclassical free market counter revolution. So first nga atong i-discuss is all about linear stages of growth, no. So we will dig deep, no, later. Isa-isahon ni nato sila different theories, no. So for the introduction of this theory, this is viewed as the process of development as a series of successful stages of economic growth through which all countries must pass. So ang thought aning linear stages of growth model class is that a certain nation cannot jump to another stage if wala pa niya na suffice ng pinakauna nga stage, no. So later ipakita na ko ang 5 ka stages, no, of linear stages of growth model, no, as proposed by Rostow. So ang thought ani is that kung tayo si Philippines, di siya makaabot diri sa stage number 3 if wala niya na suffice si stage number 1 o si stage number 2, no. That is the theory of Rostow, no, basing on the linear stages of growth model. So it was primarily an economic theory of development in which the right quantity and mixture of saving, investment, and foreign aid were all that was necessary to enable developing nations to proceed along an economic growth path that had historically been followed by more developed countries. So ang thought ni linear stages of growth model class is that yung focus is more into the saving, the investment, and the foreign aid, no. So I believe na discuss na rin itong savings, no, how important saving is in a nation, how important investment is in a nation, and of course having or receiving foreign aid mas makatabang kay jud, no. So possible these foreign aids came from the central bank, no, or other mga developed countries nga nag-offer or nagahatag og mga ayuda, no, or mga aids sa Philippines. Mo nang importante that we will really have good relationship with other nations. Di ba sa una katong time nga na ay issue sa Scarborough Shoal class, no? Unsa rin ay tawag laing term kato basta katong island. Of course, ang other people kanang mga at some point not knowledgeable on how important good relationship with other nations. Of course, mo ana sila nga asos makigiran na ta dira sa China. So girahon din natong China di sukol ta no kung manginana gud ilang thought class nga mo ana nga unsa man ni si Digong oy kay magpatuta-tuta man sa US and even China. Remember class that we are still developing country, no? And kung kwintahon siguro ang foreign aid nga atong ginadawat sa ilaha mo dako-dako pud jud, no? So dili ta basta-basta makigira, no, makig-away. Mura pud tagdaghan kay sundalo, no. Mayon tagdaghan pud kay tag equipment, wa gani tay nuclear bomb, no. So kung paluparan tag nuclear bomb babayo, no. So dili inana basta-basta mo deal into problems, no. That's why dili nato mapugos, no, nga for example at a glimpse kanang sa inana lang kamot ay sa kamot masolba na siya ma-resolba na siya nga problema because we should also think about murag unsa na kanang effect, no, if ever makig-away ta mayon tag kita ang pinaka number one sa economy, no, nga kanang we can really stand alone. So kita Philippines dapat though gitamak-tamakan na ta, no, I believe, no, murag at some point uwi para pud ning China no, naabot man ka diri, no, kalayo na nimo sa taas sa ato ang country naabot pa jud sa diri, no. Pero hinuon bahala na sila oy basta kamo class, no, dili ta basta-basta magyaw-yaw sa Facebook nga ngano pa man gi-actionan sa presidente pero because dili na anak ka sayon, no. Next is the theories and patterns of structural change, no. So wala unsa na to. Okay na class, okay. So next is the theories and patterns of structural change, no. I believe you already know the concept of structural change, no, meaning there are really changes in the structure of a certain nation, no, particularly sa ilang economic system. So from time to time naga-change jud, no, from agriculture to manufacturing to industry and other nga mga structures. So here we will be talking about how would this structural change affects the economy of a certain nation, no? So the theories and patterns of structural change, which uses modern economic theory and statistical analysis in an attempt to portray the internal process of structural change that a typical developing country must undergo if it is to succeed in generating and sustaining rapid economic growth. So ginapasabot diri class is that if a certain nation wanted to achieve development, dapat ready siya that there will really be structural changes nga mahitabo, no? So from pag na-change, of course, we should be adaptive, no? We should be flexible enough for that specific change, no? Because as what I am always saying, no, according to Heraclitus, change is the only constant in this world, no? So muna dapat kabalo ta mag-adapt, no, or ay mag-adjust. Next is the international dependence revolution. So this is a more radical and more political approach which viewed underdevelopment in terms of international and domestic power relationships, institutional and structural economic rigidities, and the resulting proliferation of dual economies and dual societies both within and among the nations of the world, no. So kini we can ay naman joning kanang international dependence revolution. This is good, okay raman mahimong dependent, no, as long as healthy nga pagka-dependent. Pero kung tahay unhealthy na, no, mura ra gud nag-uyab, no, charot. Murag uyab, no, di ba kung natay uyab class at some point na yung mga aspect nga very dependent ta sa atong uyab, no. Kung tayo mo is good tag pagluto, no, we are dependent with our uyab sa di mo ko kabalo magluto, so siya na lang ana ba okay ra na inana, no, at least you know your kanang unsa na your strengths and weaknesses. However kining the international dependence revolution, there are times of which ginagamit rata, no? We are dependent to them because they are more dominant than us, no? I mean, inana, so dependent ta, mararagod tag, unsa ragud ko yan, nung tao, murag, ni-appeal ka, ni-adto kag party, tapos ikaw ra ang maot og sanina, no? So what would you feel? Murag mo baba imong self-esteem, no? Ay, mga dato sila, tas ako pobre, murag ana good class. So, at some point, makita man po jud, no, nga basing gani sa pagtrato, no, i-try po adtog ka ng mga government offices class, no. This is not to apply sweeping generalization na, pero mostly ako public official man ko, pero tinuod jud na, no, ma-observe na ko nga kung tahay mo adto ka sa isa ka lugar or even gani in private nga mga business establishments, i-try po class nga maot imong sanina kanang gusot-gusot or even kuan, di ba, di ka entertainon og tarong, no. So mura ra pud nagkini, no, international dependence theory. So since we are still in the developing country, murag na disadvantage nga part, no. Later ma-discuss nato unsa. Then lastly is the neoclassical free market counter revolution. So this emphasized the beneficial role of free markets, open economies, and the privatization of inefficient public enterprises. So actually, I really believe nga mas nindot nga i-privatize ang uban nga mga mga kanang mga functions, no, sa mga public private ay sa government nga mga offices, kay based on my experience, no, I have worked in for 5 years na, no. So makita na ko ang difference sa planning between the private sector and the public sector, no. Nga puryaga ba ang planning jud sa government, no. Para makaingon jud ko, ay nako, kanang murag lami kayo kanang mo tindog tas magstorya because mo anak ka nga, because in we have this and that, no, marag inana good class, pero dili man pud pwede, no, kay kung magpahawd-hawd pud ka murag jud kag si kinsa, no. So pero kanang to tell you honestly, marag makaingon jud kog, ay naku, ning government, oy, kanang marag they will have this plan, they will have this thought, no, kanang marag nagplano sila, pero ang problem is that walay someone nga mag-check sa accomplishment, no. Nalagi mag-check sa accomplishment pero for the char lang, or nagplano sila na sila plan pero kato ilahang mga targets are just for the char, no, and even the accomplishment are for the char, no. Pero sa private di man ka pwede maginana nga for the char lang, no, because we are in the private sector mag-focus ka on the one is the profit, no. Second is dapat i-minimize ang cost because dili inyuhan, no, di man na inyuhang company, murag ana good class. Even gani sa CR sa public mga offices kay hugaw, no, compared sa private offices, no. So murag inana nimo makita nimo ang difference between government and the private sector. So that's why murag there is really kanang a benefit if ever i-privatize ang uban nga mga aspect, no. Mas nindot gani siguro nga i-private na ng mga airport class, no, kay kung private siguro ng airport limpyo kaayo og nindot kay mga structure siguro, no. So hopefully, no, pero di man pud jud nato pwede ihatag pud tanan, no, sa private, kay dapat katong mga resources of which scarce siya tas importante in need sa tao, dapat government pud jud ang maggunit, no. To name some, kanang mga electronic ay mga electrical services, no, like for example Nordeco, of that is still GOCC, no, government owned and controlled corporation. The Tagum Water District, that is a GOCC, no, government owned and controlled corporation. So kana sila mga importante magud na nga mga resources, no. So si government gihapon ang magunit, pero hopefully sunod makig-compete na jud, no, ang performance sa government sa mga private sectors. Okay, so now let's discuss linear stages of growth model, no. So this is proposed by Wolf W. Rostow, no. So according to Rostow, the transition from underdevelopment to development can be described in terms of a series of steps or stages through which all companies must proceed, no? So for us to see the model, dili kay makiklaro class, no, pero sige na lang. Mabasahan pa ninyo? Dili na kayo. Silang basahon lang nako. Okay, so this is the 5 stages of Rosto, no? The tradition society, the preconditions for take-off, the drive to maturity, and high mass consumption. So since wala man ni siya sub-sim class, you can just kanang search this sa Google, ha. I-search lang ninyo. Okay, so first stage is the traditional society. So of which that specific nation, no, na sila limited technology and static society. So meaning they are more into agriculturing aspect, no. They also have the static society, meaning dili wala naga-change, no. Nagpundura sila diraa. So I believe class we only have less than a minute. So if mapalong ni, I'll just resend a new code, ay a new link, ha. I-stop na lang nato, then open to sa new link.